Donovan Mitchell photographed over the weekend, Jake, working out with LeBron James. And it seems like, and now I could be wrong about this,
right.
It seems like the Utah Jazziverse, Jazz Nation, lost their minds over this photo of LeBron James and Donovan Mitchell in Chris Brickley's gym working out together. The question that came to my mind immediately when I saw that video is, do you have faith in, do you believe in Donovan Mitchell, Jake, that he is working hard to come back a new and improved Donovan Mitchell?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Donovan Mitchell is working hard. And I think there's a number of reasons for that outside of, hey, I just want to be a better NBA basketball player. Like, I think Donovan Mitchell realizes that the Utah Jazz are in what I would call a transitional phase where, the roster is going to change. You're going to have a lot of new faces that are going to be here. And so Donovan Mitchell understands that he has to come in and be better than he was last year. And I think, again, I want to be really clear, this isn't just an offensive thing. This is defensive as well. And so when I see him, at Brickley's gym with LeBron James, Donovan Mitchell needs to, savor those moments. He needs to learn from LeBron. He needs to talk to LeBron and really get an understanding of how he can be a mid-range assassin, and then furthermore, how he can be really good on the defensive end without fouling, because that's what I think is required now in the league. I think you see that, across basically every good defensive team in the NBA, they are able to contest at the rim without fouling. They're able to contest at the top of the jump shot without fouling. And I think that is where Donovan Mitchell's game is lacking. And I think, the other thing for him is understanding, this whole concept that the Utah Jazz are going to change. The leadership department has to pick up for Donovan Mitchell as well. And I think that is something that he can really learn from LeBron. We all know LeBron, over the course of his career, has always been the leader of his team. And I think it's so important for Donovan Mitchell to sort of step into that realm as a player. Like, hey, this is my Utah Jazz team. I am Donovan Mitchell. I need to be the guy. And I think that Donovan Mitchell there's learning to be done. And so how confident am I in Donovan Mitchell to get it done? I am very confident in him. I think he is one of the hardest workers we see in the league. Does that mean that he's perfect? No. But do I have confidence that he's going to work his ass off to get as close to that as possible? Yes, I absolutely am. And I think that, with where he's at contractually speaking, he's got time left with the Utah Jazz. And I think he understands that if he can come back a better player, that's only going to help him get closer to the stated goal, which is winning a championship. And I think, at the end of the day, if you're the Utah Jazz front office and you're Danny Ainge and you're Ryan Smith and you're whoever they hire to be the head coach, this should be really exciting to you.
Yeah, I think it is exciting. There's no doubt about that. But I also think that you really have to look at Donovan Mitchell, and I think you have to find a way to be objective. And I know for Utah Jazz fans, that's been a challenge, being objective when it comes to Donovan Mitchell. Does he have his flaws? Yeah, absolutely he has flaws. But I think every NBA player has flaws. Is Donovan Mitchell an elite defender? Not at this point in his career. Does he shoot consistently enough? He does not. Was he good in clutch? He was not. But how much of that is on Donovan Mitchell? Well, if I look at his ability to play in the mid-range, absolutely that's 100% on Don. And I think that's what you're seeing Donovan Mitchell work on this offseason. And I think if Utah Jazz fans will take the emotion out of their thought process on Donovan Mitchell, I don't see how you're not excited to see what he's doing this summer. And I don't see how you're not looking forward to seeing what Donovan Mitchell brings in that bag to training camp. Mm-hmm. Because if he shows up with a mid-range game, if he shows up with footwork, and if he shows up with a much better, different mentality, look out, because the sky's the limit for Don. Thanks. And when we talk about what is Donovan Mitchell capable of, because I think that's a huge question. What is Donovan Mitchell capable of? Mm-hmm. I think he is capable of being one of the top 5 players in the league, Jake. And I know that I'm probably a minority in that thinking.
Yeah.
But I do think that Donovan Mitchell has the ability to be a top 5 player in this league.
Yeah, well, and I think for Utah Jazz fans, that's a tough question. Like, is this guy in Donovan Mitchell somebody that can be that player? You believe it. I definitely think he's capable of it. But again, and I know you guys hate when I bring this up, The fact that he is 6'1" or whatever he is, he's a little bit smaller of a player, that means he's got to play the game in a different way. Notice what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that he can't be a top 5 player, right? Chris Paul does some amazing things for being as small as he is. There are guys in the league who can dominate at that size, but you have to learn where your spots on the floor are. You have to learn how to be a killer within your body, within your game. And that's what I think Donovan Mitchell needs to kind of get a grip on. Because what did we see last year out of Don? We saw a lot of deep threes. We saw that he extended his range in the three-point game. And a lot of times, it kind of took the Jazz out of games. There were a lot of times where Don did some hero balling, and the Utah Jazz paid for it on the floor. With all due respect, I'm not trying to come out and rip Don, but I think we saw that play out a bit. And so when I look at what he's doing this summer, I think that Donovan Mitchell understands that, like, hey, I have to get more of a mid-range game so that when I do take those threes, they're much higher percentage looks. When I do want to get to the basket, if the defender's got to respect my mid-range game, that's going to make it way easier for me to get to the cup. You know, outside of the fact, like, we haven't even talked about his athleticism and his first step and how good he is at getting by guys. So imagine if the defender that was playing him had to respect the fact that, yeah, he does have a hesitation move. Yeah, he does have a reliable knockdown automatic elbow jumper. How does that change Donovan Mitchell's game? And furthermore, how many wins is that worth to the Utah Jazz? We haven't even got to the fact that he will probably be, permitted to play in more space this offseason, again, based on what they do with the roster. So that's what I'm saying. Like, this summer for Donovan Mitchell is crucial as far as his future is concerned.
Yeah, and I think that goes without saying. Don's got to come back, and I really, really hope that he comes back in a mid-range assassin. I mean, I think, and I know we talk about this a lot, and I know we have talked about this a lot, but I just think when you are, the caliber of player that Donovan Mitchell is, and you're going into 2022, 2023 in the NBA, you have to be absolutely locked in the mid-range. You can no longer, turn the ball over in the paint. You can no longer miss layups. You can no longer hope to get fouled because the expectation may be there for you that they're going to blow the whistle, but we've seen that the NBA officials can't be counted on.
Vexes me.
Well, it is. It's terribly vexing, you can't count on NBA officials to make that call.
Yeah.
So this idea that Don can drive into the paint, be aggressive, get contact, and get to the line, I don't think you can expect that. He has to be able to pull up at the elbow, to pull up at the free throw line. He's got to find those two spots on the floor where every time he pulls up, it's going in.
Yeah.
In his mind, in the opponent's mind, it's going in. And if Donovan Mitchell can do that, and we've seen him do that early in his career, but I feel like because of the offense that this team ran, the emphasis on three-point shooting for Donovan Mitchell grew at a very high pace.
That's every day.
And I think last summer we saw Don came back an elite three-point shooter. That range was far, far expanded last year from three. And I think he became somewhat of a knockdown three-point shooter. But the issue is, in my opinion anyways, it came at the expense of his mid-range game. And I think when you look at the best teams in this league, whether that is Steph, Clay, and Dre in the mid-range in Golden State, certainly in the West when you look at Phoenix, I mean, Phoenix, they win games with Book and CP3 in the mid-range. Devin Booker, in my opinion, is the exact kind of player Donovan Mitchell needs to be. And I don't think they're far apart. I don't. I really don't think they're far apart. But what I do think is that Devin Booker is an absolute assassin in the mid-range.
Yeah.
From the baseline, from the elbow, from the top of the key. And by the way, he's still a knockdown three-point shooter. Donovan Mitchell can do all of that. I just think that right now, he's not because the mid-range hasn't been the emphasis in this offense.
Yeah, and I think that Donovan Mitchell is somebody who can be that. I think that he's obviously physically capable of making those shots. But again, I can't emphasize this enough, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but guys like Donovan Mitchell, guys like Devin Booker and Jason Tatum, like these premier scoring options, what's the one thing that gets taken away from them in the postseason? That one thing is space. That's how you mess with these guys. You get in their grill, you take away their space, you make it difficult for them to operate. And so my point here is that with Donovan Mitchell and this Utah Jazz team, dude hasn't had space to operate in like 3 seasons. Like most of his career, he hasn't had the kind of space that these other guys get because that's not how they ran offense. So I'm telling you, like, if he works on that mid-range, gets a reliable jumper that he can knock down consistently, maintains his 3-point game, and they change this offense. Obviously, there's going to be change in the offense with the hiring of a new head coach. But, like, if that offense is built to get Don in good positions, he's going to have a phenomenal year. Now, is that – I think the real crux of the conversation is Donovan Mitchell's best work for the Utah Jazz enough to take them to the postseason on his own? Is it enough to just get into the playoffs? Like what does that do? That remains to be seen. That's what I think is tough to answer right now because we have no idea who he's going to be playing with.
Well, I also think that Greg Hawkins gave us a $5 tip this morning and said, "What's up, y'all?"
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate
Greg
you, bro.
Hawkins, by the way, the movie premiere looked fun. The clips that you've posted look phenomenal.
Having fun is the name of the game.
Yeah, so congratulations. Greg Hawkins is a legit TV and movie star.
Yeah, dude.
Watches the show. Appreciate you, Greg.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for the tip. The blind sportsman DS says, "Yo, Donnie is destined for greatness. LeBron to Utah, LOL." That
and
was
he's going to wear
the,
number 23. We all know that.
That was one of the
Yeah.
But wait, no, Buckets O'Bench wears number 23.
Well,
Yeah.
No,
but that was one of the funny things about this picture that came out with Donovan and LeBron James in Chris Brickley's gym. Chris, the renowned skills coach in the NBA, was that everybody was like, "Oh, Don's going to the Lakers." And so I jokingly tweeted, "No, LeBron's coming to the Jazz." And everybody lost their mind. It was one of those things that
classic.
That to me was classic.
Yeah,
exactly right. Good morning, Tanner Plummer says, "Morning, you non-credible sources." Yeah, LeBron to the Jazz, man.
Hey guys,
it's happening. Edgar Garcia says, "Good morning, players." What's up? Kenny says, "My brother predicted Gobert trade announced today."
Well,
I can only tell you what I've been told, and I continue to be told by Jazz sources. People at the team have told me repeatedly that the draft was not the place that the Jazz were going to be able to make moves because they did not have draft assets to trade, which made it very difficult. If you look at the deals that got done at the NBA draft, it was teams that had multiple picks. I mean, look no further than the Knicks, who were able to acquire and then offload picks to create cap space for Jalen Brunson. But the Jazz don't have that flexibility. The Jazz are in the luxury tax. It really limits what they're able to do and what they're able to acquire. And by the way, that also has a massive impact on their ability to operate in free agency, which is why there's a lot of people who are thinking there's going to be a Rudy Gobert trade this week. I will still maintain, and the very latest on Rudy Gobert is the Jazz continue to maneuver to try and make a Rudy Gobert deal. And when I say maneuver, they were very active leading up to the draft. Things have quieted down quite a bit, but that's because they need other teams to make deals to facilitate a Rudy Gobert trade. They need other teams who acquired those picks at the draft. They need those teams to make deals now.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see that as we lead up to Friday. By the way, NBA free agency opens July 1st, which is Friday.
Let's go. I've been waiting.
But a lot of deals are already in place. There are a lot of free agent deals. There are a lot of sign and trades I think are going to happen. I don't think, a sign and trade is not a viable option for the Jazz. They need to move Rudy Gobert's contract to create cap space, to create the ability to have the freedom to make those deals, Jake. So I think Friday is a monumental day in the NBA. There is no doubt about that. But I think it's monumental because when you look at what the Jazz can do and what we should expect from the Jazz in free agency, I don't think you should expect much. I think once we find out what is the return, what's the net on Rudy Gobert's deal on the trade, because I still maintain I'm 75-25 that they're going to make a Rudy Gobert trade, and I would not be surprised if it happens this week. In fact, I would assume the best, highest return would come this week leading up to free agency. So I would not be surprised at all if it happened this week. But you need to wait and see what their return on that is and how much space that creates for them. I still maintain the Chicago Bulls are the best place to do that. I still maintain that as of Saturday afternoon, Patrick Williams was not going to be involved in a Chicago Bulls Rudy Gobert deal. That has not changed. The Bulls went out to market. They tried to acquire extra picks. That did not happen. I think that is an indicator that Toronto likely becomes the most likely place for the Jazz to make a Rudy Gobert trade. Just based on the things we're being told, the things we're hearing, Toronto becomes a much better answer than Chicago does, because Chicago doesn't have a whole lot of draft assets in the future. I mean, they really are very limited on what they can do. And I think Danny Ainge, and rightfully so, has prioritized getting back into the draft in the coming years.
Yeah.
Because they were not able to do that. And I think it is a significant issue. Now, I'm not telling you that you're not going to win a championship or compete for a title because you don't have draft picks, but it certainly helps you to fill the back end of your roster. Now, what you do with those, and obviously we've seen that guys like Trent Forrest, Jared Butler certainly was a storyline last year in his lack of use. I mean, all of those things matter.
Yeah.
But this team, with this CEO and with this owner, they are very committed to building a team through free agency and trades that keeps them in the playoff picture and allows them to build around Donovan Mitchell and allows them to win a championship in the near term with Don.
Yeah, and I think they have a couple of these boxes that they need to check, you know, as far as like moving forward. I don't mean just from a player standpoint, but like moving forward in the organization, like you do need to improve your developmental game with these young guys. Like again, we're sitting here talking about, hey, like who can they go and get? Like what deals can be made? Like what are all these things that we can do? But you've got a guy in Jared Butler that you could easily develop and turn into a serviceable backup point guard. And maybe, I don't know. See, that's the trouble. I don't know if the guy could start in the league or not because we just haven't seen enough of him. I know that he shows flashes of some pretty special talent, but is it consistent enough? Does he make good decisions consistently enough? Like that. Like those are the things that need to be improved. So I will still maintain the development piece. Now that Danny Ainge is here, I would guess will go up significantly. And if that happens, they're going to be in a much better place moving forward. But it's going to take time to work through the mistakes of the past.
Yeah, and I again, as we talk about Donovan Mitchell, the Utah Jazz and NBA free agency coming up here on the Monty Show, I again maintain I am 100% on board with how the Jazz are going about this. You can see they are trying to trade Rudy Gobert. They are building around Donovan Mitchell because I will tell you, I believe that Donovan Mitchell can be a top 5 player in this league. I believe that Donovan Mitchell is the guy that you can put at the center of a team and you can win a championship.
I'm for real.
I say that, and he is for real in my opinion. And I say that because I truly believe, as Chiron26 says, Donovan is going to be a GOAT. I think before it's all said and done, Donovan Mitchell could be the best player the Utah Jazz have ever had.
But what do they need to do to put him in position to be that? That's what I think the conversation is.
Well, and I think that's a big one. I think what you have to do is I think you have to do what Boston's done, which is surround Jason Tatum with a lot of talent. I think you have to do what Phoenix did. You need a guy on this team, in my opinion, that's won a championship. You need a guy on this team right now who can say, this is how you do that. You know, like, hey, control your emotions. He can sit in the middle of a locker room or stand in the middle of a locker room and say, hey, guess what? I have a championship ring. My word carries a little more weight than yours. Who can, and I would love to see a CP3 Devin Booker situation here in Utah for Donovan Mitchell, because I think Don has some maturity to do to be instilled in him.
Yeah.
He needs to learn how to be a leader at this level because Donovan is naturally an alpha, in my opinion. I don't know Don, just covering the team a little bit, watching every one of his games, like hearing the things he says, the way he answers questions. Don is an alpha male, a leader, a guy that wants to win at all costs. He needs help understanding how to leverage that. That truly is what took the Suns to the next level. Now, they also drafted really well. Obviously, Devin Booker's an example of that. But I think the Mikal Bridges pick, where this is a guy that had multiple years at the top of the college basketball world with one of the best teams in college basketball, stepping into a situation where no stage was going to be too big for him, even as a rookie.
Yeah.
And you saw as the Suns progressed through the playoffs, got to the finals, got, you know, in tough situations in big games, he was able to perform. The Jazz don't have that. And that's why this Rudy Gobert trade becomes so critical. That's the beginning of the future. The minute that they make a Rudy Gobert trade, that helps Donovan Mitchell become a much better off-court leader for this team, because his game's always going to do the talking. I think Donovan Mitchell, and I think we've seen that, Jake, that Donovan Mitchell does talking with his game.
Yeah.
He's going to come back this year a better player.
Yeah.
I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that, and I think that again, the leadership piece is huge. I think that Don is, in order for this team to go places, the culture in the locker room has to be on point. I mean, it's just a required ingredient to baking the cake, if you will. Like the team relationships and how it feels, and do these guys like coming to the office every day? Like, that has to be on point. And I think for that to be on point, Don's got to be on his game as far as the team is concerned, and as far as leadership and how everything feels. And that's why I say, like, when we talk about head coaches, like the Will Hardys of the world, the Johnny Bryants of the world, like these guys that we've been telling you about, that's what those guys do really well. They're going to foster a really good environment on the team. And not that Quinn didn't, but I just think when you're with a team for 10 years, when you hear the same thing every single day, sometimes over the course of a decade, you just need a new voice. And I think that's also what will happen when they bring the next guy in. That's why I'm saying, if you're a Utah Jazz fan right now and you're looking at what this Donovan Mitchell picture of him and LeBron at Brickley's gym, this is not something to have anxiety about. This is something that you should be excited about. You should be excited about the fact that the best player in the Utah Jazz is learning from arguably the best player the league's ever seen. That should be exciting to you. It's definitely exciting for me.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about Donovan Mitchell, I think it's a dangerous game to compare him to other players.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's inevitable when we're talking about Devin Booker and Jason Tatum and, pick the other young gun in this league, whether it's a Ja Morant, whether it's a whoever you want to point to. Those guys all have built-in advantages that Don does not. That's not an excuse. That's not a thing where, hey, Don would be better if.
Right.
But my point is, you can't win alone in this league. And if we've seen one thing out of LeBron James be very true, LeBron never did it as a singular only player. Whether that is Kyrie, whether that is Anthony Davis, whether that is, the decision.
The decision.
With D-Wade and Bosh in Miami, it's very hard to win in this league. And if you look at Golden State, everybody on that roster played a key role, whether that's Draymond Green, whether that's Clay, certainly Poole, Steph Curry obviously is the straw that stirs that drink, but he wasn't going to win a title on his own. I look at Boston and the emergence of Jason Tatum and Jalen Green together, backed by the best defensive core in the NBA, backed by a young head coach who knows how to communicate with today's NBA player. Those are all advantages that Donovan Mitchell does not currently enjoy. So I think those are big ones. So
Bojan.
Bojan Bogdanovic.
Right.
And again, you know what? It's funny you bring that up. You play that drop.
Right.
Because I do think that Bojan Bogdanovic is a guy who can be on this team and they can win a championship.
Yeah.
Because one of the other questions that we've talked a lot about on this show is, can the Utah Jazz win a championship with Donovan Mitchell? Will Donovan Mitchell win a title with the Utah Jazz? They can. Will he? I don't know. Ask me in 6 weeks. Ask me when this roster is largely constructed. Then we could talk about, will Donovan Mitchell win a championship with the Jazz? Because I'll go back to what I said a year ago.
Yeah.
A year ago, pretty much right now. If this team wants to win 3 titles in 5 years, they shouldn't have re-signed Mike Conley. And that deal last year, and it's on our YouTube videos. Go back and look at it. That video set this team back, that contract for Mike Conley set this team back 2 years.
Facts.
That was a good trade when they make it. I'm not going to sit here and cry about the history of that trade and who you lost and had and whatever. That trade was a good trade. Re-signing Mike Conley was a bad decision. To pay him that kind of money was a bad decision.
And I think you knew the risk as well. I mean, you knew that this was a guy that missed time, and
yes.
that's what really gives me, pause about the past and where you are now. And that's why I think a lot of Jazz fans, like last week, if you listen to the show, you remember that everybody in the comments was talking about how, like, hey, should we be worried that they didn't do anything on draft night, that nothing got done? The Gobert deal didn't get done. We didn't make any type of deal revolving around Conley to get picks. And what I'm telling you is that I don't think you should be worried or have anxiety about anything right now. I think that anxiety should start to set in if the Rudy trade doesn't happen. Now, I'm not telling you that there's even a chance on God's green earth that it's not going to happen. They're definitely going to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, let's get some of your comments in here. Trevor Pearson says Chicago has 0 players Jazz are interested in. That's completely wrong.
Yeah.
With all due respect. Just talking to our sources at the Jazz, talking to people around the league, I can tell you right now the Jazz would do just about anything in that deal to get Patrick Williams and Ayo Dosunmu. There is just no doubt about that. I mean, is Nikola Vucevic somebody that's a deal maker breaker? No, absolutely he's not. Does he make you a better team? Probably. He makes you a better offense. He is a 0 on defense. Mm-hmm. Does a guy like Kobe White make you better? Yeah, I don't have much interest in Kobe White as a standalone. But when we talk about NBA trades are not made one for one. NBA trades are a package to make salary work. And if you think the Bulls don't have talent that you would want, I don't know what Bulls team you're talking about. Maybe you're talking about the South Florida Bulls. I don't know. But when I look at the Chicago Bulls, I want Patrick Williams and I want Ayo Dosunmu. And call me biased, obviously, based on the poster that's on the wall behind me. I'm a huge Chicago Bulls fan. I watch just about every one of their games, and I'm telling you right now, Patrick Williams is the exact thing that this team needs.
He's an assassin.
That guy's a monster. He can defend the perimeter. He can shoot it a little bit. He can get to the basket. Like, if Patrick Williams is on this team last year, the Utah Jazz beat the Dallas Mavericks. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
And I will also tell you, watch Ayo Dosunmu. You don't know that name. You don't know who that guy is. But I'm telling you, watch Ayo Dosunmu. And again, I don't know if Jeremy Bolton's in the room this morning or not, but I'm telling you, Alex Caruso's a guy that you want on a championship team. There's a reason that he was a year ago one of the most in-demand players in this league.
Yeah.
Because Alex Caruso does the little things that you don't have somebody on this roster to currently do. And you can say a lot of things about the Bulls. Are they deep? Sure. But they don't have players you're interested in. So Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, again, Dosunmu, Williams, they've got a bunch of dudes I'm interested in. Maybe I'm just a homer. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dudes I'm interested in. Tanner Plummer, good morning to you, my friend. He says, so in other words, Trevor Pearson, Chicago has nothing to offer.
Hey, guys.
I just don't agree with that.
Yeah.
The draft pick thing's the biggest problem. And it goes back to what I've said since the beginning. This is why Rudy Gobert is a 3-team trade. It's a $50 million deal.
Yeah.
Very few teams have $50 million sitting around looking to pick up a center who doesn't score, in the rotational offense, who needs you to miss shots for him to score his best, highest use. That's an issue for Rudy Gobert.
Yeah. But
But again, what I'm telling you is there's no doubt in my mind Chicago has players you need. The problem is they don't have draft assets. They're not in a dissimilar situation to where the Utah Jazz are. Kenny says, play Butler next year. Start him if Conley is traded, but don't feed him the last 2 minutes of every game. Well, I think you got to make or break on Jared Butler. I totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it as we go back and we're armchair quarterbacking and not playing Jared Butler this past season was probably a mistake.
Well, I think we've been saying that they are not, like, Quinn didn't play him enough. I mean, we've been on that train for a long time. I mean, this isn't. We're not armchair quarterbacking that. We've been talking about that for months. So I just think that not playing young guys is not a formula that wins anymore. Again, look no further than Golden State. All their young guys contributed. Jordan Poole was somebody that nobody knew about 3 seasons ago.
Yes.
And developed into an absolute savage that helped them win a championship. Nobody's talking about what they're doing with James Wiseman right now. And I don't know how long he'll be on that roster, but I'm just telling you the gold standard for development is the Golden State Warriors, and you should like follow that. Like, I don't think there's any problem in copying what they do. Like, play the young guys, a good amount of minutes. Not the whole game, but a good amount of minutes. They got to develop.
Yeah, I agree. Tanner Plummer says, Jazz Nation, well, after that Don LeBron video, I feel like Spaz Out Nation is more accurate.
Hey, guys.
Jeremy Bolton, good morning to you, my friend. Giggity, good morning to you. He says, what's up, fellas? Love the new setup. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Big change is coming, folks. It's going to continue to evolve. I think you will quickly see that. Let's see. Trevor Pearson again says, "Sucks. Jazz wasted Rudy. Defense should have won the chip when the Bucks won. Jazz make the finals. They definitely win." I don't know. You know, we've had this conversation a lot on the show too about, you know, were the Jazz ever talented enough to win a championship? They probably were. But were they ever good enough to win a championship? They probably were not.
Never.
I mean, I think the year after the bubble was probably your best chance.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get that deep into the playoffs, and you go to the Clippers series again, when you have coaches the caliber of a Ty Lue, of a Monty Williams, of a Steve Kerr, when you look at the last couple of years of what happened to the Utah Jazz, they got diagnosed to death. I mean, you had a guy in Jason Kidd this year, Ty Lue last year, that just exposed your weakness. And the issue became that this roster didn't change. From the bubble to today, the roster is pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at the guys who have changed for better or for worse, if I said to you, and we could play this game. I'm happy to do this right now. I'm going to say a player's name, better or worse over the last 3 years. Donovan Mitchell, by far better. Like, it's not even, I don't even hesitate. The 3-point shot's better. I think his ability to finish at the rim has gotten better. His IQ has gotten better. Now, are there things that he needs to work on? Yes.
Yeah.
But is he better than he was 3 years ago? Yes, he's better than he was 3 years ago.
He's better than he was 3 years ago, but I think that when you have the expectations on your shoulder that he does, I think it just being better.
But wait. Why expectations on his shoulder? This team, this roster is not built around him.
Yeah.
This roster is built around.
But the conversation has been, you know, hey, like, is Donovan Mitchell a superstar? Donovan Mitchell has been, like, nationally and locally. He is regarded as one of the better players in the league.
But what's the truth about Donovan Mitchell? He's a superstar. What's the truth about Donovan Mitchell? He's got to get better defensively. What's the truth about Donovan Mitchell? He's got to be able to play at all three levels, and right now he doesn't. But is he better than he was 3 years ago? Yes. Is Rudy Gobert better than he was 3 years ago? Probably not. Like, watching Rudy Gobert's development, especially over the last 2 seasons post-bubble, he's the same guy.
Yeah.
He's the same guy.
Yeah.
He is an elite rim protector who, once he gets outside of the paint, that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
And so when I look at what happened in the Clippers series 2 years ago, was that unlike what Dallas did to the Utah Jazz this past year?
No, I mean, they did it in a slightly different way. I mean, obviously they didn't take him. I mean, they did take him to the corner a couple of times, but not as egregiously or as blatantly as the Clippers did. But yeah, I mean, the Dallas Mavericks were definitely switching Rudy. I mean, that was the
How many
center of the
times
series.
did we see Jalen Brunson switch on to Rudy Gobert on offense?
Yeah.
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
And this goes back to when you're watching, you know, it reminds me of CP3 guarding Rudy Gobert and they won't throw him the ball. Because, again, why won't you throw him the ball? Well, that was 2 years ago when he doesn't have an offensive game.
Yeah, there's nothing he can do.
So I look at what happened this year. You can't throw him the ball because they tried. They had games in the Dallas series. They had games where they forced him the ball.
Well, if you remember, he was saying that he didn't get the ball enough, and then they ran sets for him, and it wound up in turnovers.
And he can't dribble.
Yeah.
Rudy Gobert has not improved. Bojan Bogdanovic, better, worse, or the same. He's declined. Mike Conley, he's declined. Royce O'Neal, same guy. Same guy.
Yeah.
Same guy.
Yeah.
So, we can sit here and we can have conversations.
Jordan Clarkson?
Same guy. Jordan, listen, Jordan's job is to score the basketball. He does that very well on most nights.
Yeah.
Jordan Clarkson, again, because we tell you we're the truth in Salt Lake Sports Radio, right? Like when you want to talk sports, where do you come for the truth? You come to the Monty Show, right?
Right.
The truth is Jordan Clarkson isn't a leverage player. He's not a guy that's going to win, and he's not a guy that's going to lose you a championship.
Facts.
Donovan Mitchell is going to win or lose you a championship. Rudy Gobert is going to win or lose you a championship. Bojan Bogdanovic, and I love Bojan, and I think he's got a place on this team as a third or fourth guy. The ball was in his hand with the series on the line.
And he missed.
And listen, Don, he missed a lot in the fourth quarter. He did not have a particularly stellar playoff run this year.
No.
So everybody's got moles on their face. But when we talk about this team growing and developing, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're not standing still, right? Donovan Mitchell's getting better. He is younger and he's learning and he's growing. So when I go back to what Pearson was saying here about it's too bad they wasted Donovan or they wasted Rudy Gobert, I just don't see it that way. And again, you know what? I don't think you're wrong, Trevor. I certainly do not think you're wrong. I just disagree with you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to say that they wasted Rudy Gobert when I never see Rudy Gobert working on anything. I mean, obviously, he does everything that any normal NBA player would do, but if you're Rudy Gobert, why wouldn't you put some emphasis on improving your offensive game? Why am I not seeing Rudy Gobert in Brickley's gym? Why am I not seeing Rudy Gobert in any gym? I'm seeing him in the gym lifting weights, but am I seeing you working on any sort of drop step or any sort of little hook maybe, or like just anything around the rim? Because that's the other thing that nobody wants to talk about. He does not have good touch around the rim. Are we on the same page about that? Like Rudy doesn't have good touch around the rim. It is dunk or nothing for Rudy Gobert.
Greg Hawkins makes a great point. Rudy is a classic story of what could have been if only he had developed year over year. And this is why this is a great point? Because the question is, where do you develop? Because I don't think you develop in season anymore. I don't think you develop in season. I think when you look at the guys in this league who consistently grow and develop, and again, I'll use Donovan Mitchell as an example, because he works and pays big bread to Chris Brickley to fix the issues. And Chris Brickley's not a guy who you roll up into his gym and he's like, all right, you got to turn that hand right. They like breakdown film. They look at that Don's game. They look at Book's game. They look at LeBron's game. That's why you see so many players working with a guy like Chris Brickley, because he's proven. But I look at a guy like Rudy Gobert, and I see him working with his international coaches. I don't see him improving. I don't see him having a handle. I don't see him having a jump shot. I see him shooting three-pointers in the corner in practice at the Olympics last summer, and he's going to play in the Euros coming up here in a month. But what does that really mean? I really hope that people understand Rudy Gobert is not young anymore. This is not a guy who's 24 who can spend the entire summer sweating it out in the gym with his back to the basket.
Yeah, he just turned 30 this week.
Yeah, that's not who this guy is anymore. He's 30 years old.
Yeah.
And the bigger issue is when you are his size and your arms are as long as his arms are and his legs are, it's really difficult to evolve offensively. When you do not pop out of the womb with a soft touch around the rim, it's really hard to learn that. And you see how much effort he's put into his free throws, Rudy Gobert. And he has. He's put a lot of effort into his free throws. But that's not the same thing as his back to the basket. And you know what? I think, Greg, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I do. Leonard, Don, and Endelov, good morning, my friend. He says, Don doesn't even have the it factor, the mentally greats like Giannis, KD, Bron, Steph, and others have. The factor to just do whatever it takes to be the last team standing. Absolutely right. He hasn't shown he has that. No doubt. Joe Parker, good morning to you. Didn't Clarkson win Sixth Man of the Year? He did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
But he's not a guy that you're going to win or lose with. He's not going to be – I mean, hell, at the end of games, there's a lot of times he's not even on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the sets that they went with, Jordan wasn't even on the floor at the end of games.
But that's what I mean. Like, bringing in a new head coach, like, all of these things are going to change. Like, the way they go about this roster and, you know, who plays what and who gets what minutes. Like, all that's going to change. And that's what I'm most excited about. I'm most excited about this offense evolving and seeing what Don can do within that. Because I agree, he does need to develop that killer mentality. But I also agree, like, the consistency has to improve for that to be a possibility. He's got to believe that no matter who's on him and no matter what the game situation is, that he can get to the elbow and knock that shot down. That's what all the greats have.
Yeah, and I think there is very little doubt in my mind. This team can win a championship in the next 3 years. In the next 2 years. You got to trade Rudy Gobert to make that happen. And not because he sucks, because you don't play in the NBA, and if you play in the NBA, you don't suck.
Yeah.
He's making 23.3% of your salary cap.
Dude.
He's making $41 million a year on average.
I started having second thoughts.
You know, like that contract, honestly.
It's massive, bro. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's $41 million a year, man.
Yeah, thank you.
You can't win with that kind of deal on that kind of guy.
Yep.
If Don was making $41 million a year, we would be having a very different conversation.
Okay.
But he's not. So we're not. And it's unfortunate. Hib says, good morning, sexy MFers. Good morning to
baby.
you, sir. Good. Thank you for referring to us correctly.
Yeah.
That's hugely important.
What's an erection?
Exactly. Good morning, Jacob Yates says, Boyan has also hit those shots, though. I don't disagree with that.
But just,
recency bias can't blind you. Boyan's legit, he says.
Yeah.
I think, but again, I'm the guy who says he can be on your team and win a championship.
He's the guy who's a victim of the offense and how they ran it. That's absolutely true. Like, Boyan is somebody who gave you 50 against the Nuggets 2 seasons ago, and then you get 5 points the next night because he can't get the damn ball. Like, that's what I mean. Like, there's got to be more balance in this offense. They got to actually run sets. Like, that was one of my biggest complaints with Quinn. This team never actually like ran sets. It was
Don and everybody else.
Yeah, it was set a pick for Don and see what happens.
Yes.
And that's not going to be good enough for to beat NBA defenses.
Totally agree.
Their discipline in the pick and roll defense is too good now to just run pick and roll the whole game and think that that's going to be good enough.
Let's see. Alex Chacon says, T-Mac said the same thing about Rudy a couple of days ago. Year after year, no improvement on offense. We've been begging for this on this show for 2 years.
Yeah.
Hey, get in the gym.
Since the Nuggets lost.
Well, and I go back to what we talked about with Rudy last summer. Don't play the Olympics last summer.
Yeah.
Don't play the Olympics. You needed to dedicate yourself to the Jazz. And I understand the Olympics, playing for your country. I get it. One, that dude's played a lot of basketball, Rudy Gobert, in the last 3 to 5 years. A lot, because the Jazz have been in the playoffs. Remember that. He played in the Olympic tournament. Now he's going to go play the Euros this summer. I'm telling you, at some point, you're 7 foot. You're going to break down physically.
Yeah.
He needs time. But he also needs time not only to rest and regrow and rebuild.
Yeah.
He needs time to improve his game. And when you are constantly playing in games on a team, you cannot learn and grow. And the other thing is, what's the message that he's getting internationally versus from his coaches? Now, obviously the issue is you haven't hired a Will Hardy yet. You haven't hired a head coach.
Yeah.
But over the last several years, I think part of the frustration, or at least as I was told by Utah Jazz sources, was that Donovan and Rudy had 2 different paths over the summer. One of the reasons that this team is so willing to hitch its wagon to Donovan Mitchell is because they don't question his work ethic or desire, ever. When you look at Rudy Gobert, you paid that guy $41 million a year, and he's doing whatever he wants in the summer.
Yeah.
He's doing what he thinks is best. And the result hasn't been there. Donovan Mitchell has come back every year addressing a weakness. Rudy Gobert is not.
That's pretty much self-explanatory.
And Rudy has got to come back with a game that he can rely on. And now you're in this situation where you're going to trade Rudy Gobert because he's a liability, not an asset. And I think that's a huge difference.
Yes.
And I know that's painful to say, but Rudy Gobert's a liability. As much as that hurts, that's the fact.
Yeah.
When you're making that kind of money, expectations go up. Your responsibility goes up.
Yes.
Your responsibility no longer is just simply to yourself and to France. Your
And Evan Fournier.
your $41 million responsibility is to the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
And I know I've been told multiple times by my sources at the Jazz that there is frustration that he has not dedicated himself to growing and improving in the summer. So there is definitely dissent between Rudy's camp and the Jazz about what he should be doing in the summer. I promise you that. So we'll see. Jeremy Bolton says, I totally agree. I'd totally take Alex Caruso, on the Jazz. They need his stat line of 1.4 points, 2 boards, 9 turnovers, and 0.4 assists per game. Okay. I mean, that's not his stat line. Alex Chacon says, do we think it's going to be Will Hardy? I do. And again, I lean back on what I've put out there on Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, the day they fired Quinn Snyder, we tweeted that Will Hardy is going to be a guy that you need to pay attention to. And Will Hardy is, in my opinion, I think he is the odds-on favorite to be the next head coach.
And I think he's a good selection. I mean, he's what you're looking for. He's a young head coach, but he's also got the playoff experience. And that's what I think really separates him from several of these other candidates, where it's like, hey, we want that young head coach. We need the relatability. We want a different culture in our locker room. But at the same time, we got to have a guy that knows how to win. And that's what I think is so special about Will Hardy. Now, will he want to coach this team? I think so. Absolutely. I don't know. I couldn't think of a better opportunity or a better player to coach for your first time out than Donovan Mitchell. You know?
I also think, though, that Will Hardy has a lot of competition. I mean, the biggest question for me with who the Utah Jazz hire is, who are you going to staff that coach with? Because you're not going to hire a guy like Will Hardy and say, okay, bring in any assistants you want. That's not going to happen. And I think that's why you get David Fizdale news. I think that's why you get Terry Stotts news. And, I think they would like to talk to Mike D'Antoni. That hasn't happened yet. I think Mike is I think Mike's probably still a little sore and upset about what happened in Charlotte.
Yeah.
That he didn't get that job. But I think that Mike D'Antoni would be an unbelievable lead assistant. I think David Fizdale would be an unbelievable lead assistant. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, if you were asking me today if you had a gun to my head and you said you got to pick a coach, it's going to be Will Hardy. I have very little doubt about that. Joe Parker says if Mitchell and Clarkson learn to drive and kick, shooters would be wide open. Don does drive and kick routinely. I think it's one of the best things he does. Joe also says Americans don't understand the importance of national representation. Well, I do understand that. The issue is you're paying him 23% of your salary cap. That's cool that he gets to go and lose to the U.S. national team at the Olympics. I want him winning against Dallas. I want him winning against the Clippers. That's cool that you're going to go play in the Euros this year. I want you playing in the finals, not in the Euros. And the issue is that Rudy, when he plays for the French national team, isn't developing.
Yeah, and also combine that, not developing, he's also being told he's some, ridiculously good player. He comes back. That was one of the biggest issues I had. He came back to the team and thought he was the Jesus Christ of basketball, and that Evan Fournier somehow was some great player. Like, that's what we heard. Hey, him and Evan Fournier are really tight, and they're working out together, and everything's awesome, and Rudy's got to take more control. And Evan Fournier is telling him that Rudy, hey, you should have the ball more, and you got to demand this and you got to demand that. And I think it led to a lot of problems. Where are we? Hey, you didn't develop your offensive game. You think you're better than you are, and you're going to get traded. And that's my problem. That's cool if you want to say that Americans don't appreciate national representation. I'm not talking Utah Jazz basketball to talk about the Euros or the Olympics. I'm talking about NBA championships for Donovan Mitchell and whoever else they decide to put on the roster. And I don't think that Rudy Gobert prioritizes winning a championship, because if he did, he'd have a jumper or he'd have a little push shot or he'd have any sense of individual offensive game. And he doesn't have that.
Yeah, I agree. Talking with Raphael podcast says, I heard David Fizdale is interviewing for the Jazz job. Do you think he's a great fit? As a lead assistant, I do.
Not as a head coach.
I would not hire him as a head coach. That's just my opinion. Bobby Anderson, good morning to you. I think Mitchell is going to have his best year by far this coming season. He's certainly motivated. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Jeremy Bolton, also, why isn't there any BYU representation in your new setup? What are you talking about? There's a BYU, an autographed John Beck hat right there.
They can't see it.
Oh, because the logo's covering
blocking it.
Well, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll try to find a new place for it.
Yeah, sorry.
Trust me, it's there. By the way, there's this football that's right here as well. That's autographed by John Beck and Johnny Harleen. So,
I mean, if you want to send us your favorite BYU jersey, you can do that.
Well, he says, shame. Let's replace Baker with Jaron.
Well,
is there a Jaron Hall fathead? I might do that. I don't know. We'll see. Ruff's official, good morning to you. Don still has no mid-range game or defense, but he is working so much more in the offseason than everyone else. Okay, so I'm assuming you're being sarcastic because, well, you're Ruff's official. If you can't see the year-over-year development in Donovan Mitchell, you're not looking for it because you don't have to look very hard. I mean, the three-point range that he showed up with last year, exponential growth. And again, all of this is to say my biggest complaint about Donovan Mitchell is he doesn't stay healthy. He misses too many games with soft tissue injuries.
Yeah.
And that's got to get better. He's got to become a more durable player. How do you do that? Well, the same way Devin Booker did it. You stay out of the paint. And you pick and choose your spots to attack the basket.
And I understand the sentiment that Ruff's is coming with, like, hey, like all we hear is Don is working, but he still has these issues. And I have to say on some level, not 100%, but on some level I understand that. Like, at some point Donovan's got to show up and arrive. He's got to come with a complete game. And I think that's coming. Like, it is a process. It takes time to get to that point. I mean, all of the greats, like, excluding guys like LeBron or Kevin Durant, like right. You look at Steph, you look at Book, you look at, any of these guys that came into the league and needed work, like even like look at the Ball brothers, like Lonzo got better. Now he's still getting hurt constantly. LaMelo's gotten a lot better and even through his second season. Ja Morant got way better year over year. So that's what I'm telling you, like it's just a process and Don's going through that right now.
And I'll say it again. If you look at the guys on this roster, there's one player on the entire team that's gotten better every single year.
Yeah.
It's Donovan Mitchell. And if I'm wrong, point to the guy who's gotten better. I mean, I think, and if we're contrasting, and I hate comparing Don to Rudy because their games are just so different. Rudy Gobert does one thing very, very well.
Yeah.
He is a rim protector, and it's won him the Defensive Player of the Year 3 times.
Yeah.
And that's the end of what Rudy Gobert is as a player.
Well, and I think a lot of people would say, well, he sets really good screens, and I would agree with that. He is a really good screen setter, and he pushes the limit on what's legal.
In totality, what he is an elite rim protector, an elite rebounder,
yeah,
and a really good screener.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're going to need to be able to score on your own.
Yeah.
And he can't.
Yep.
And, all those ridiculous comparisons to him and Giannis are years old now because Giannis has evolved as a player.
Yeah, and that's the most egregious comparison in my opinion. I mean, Giannis didn't have a jump shot and now can knock it down from anywhere.
No jump shot at all, ever.
Yeah.
And now he's got that. Joe Parker says Luka Doncic.
What about him?
Do you mean playing internationally? Well, here's the thing I would say. When you're one of or arguably the best offensive player in the NBA, you generally can do whatever you want. I mean, it's a production business. You want to be a top producer? Okay, well, when you're a top producer, you get all the benefits of being a top producer.
No break.
When you're not, you don't.
Yeah.
That's simple. And Luka is, I agree with that 100%. Eduardo says Luka Doncic is basketball gifted. He was the best player in Europe at the age of 17. Gobert is about 30 years old, and nothing evolved. Yeah, I agree with that. Tanner says, wait, autographed John Beck hat in football? What's the story behind that? Man Camp, like 10 years ago now.
Hey, guys.
And John Beck used to do an appearance on K-Fan every week.
Right.
And so we formed a relationship. John Beck and Johnny Harleen. It was amazing. Jeremy Bolton says, in the past 3 years with the same roster, Don really is the only one who has gotten better. I can't think of anyone else who has made the same jump he's made. I totally agree. Alex Chacon says, you put Rudy on Chicago and they're really scary. Absolutely. And I think Chicago knows that.
Yep.
And I think Chicago knows that they've got to get better defensively, especially in rim protection. So there's only one guy who can make you that much better, championship better at rim protection. Well, that's Rudy Gobert.
Yep.
And I think they'd love to have him. Absolutely. Jacob Yates, the biggest disappointment was Mike Conley this year. Replace him, moved on to the 1. We need bigger players at the position they're at. A 6'4" power forward in Royce O'Neal. Yikes. Yeah. You need what this team really needs. And this is the problem with the Rudy Gobert conversation.
Yeah.
You can win with Rudy Gobert as long as he's not making $41 million a year.
Yeah.
The issue isn't his talent. And we've said this, I feel like, ad nauseum, and I know we have a lot of new listeners on the show, but the issue with Rudy is not even his game. When you make max money, 23% of your salary cap, you have very little flexibility. It's why Royce O'Neal is your starting 4.
It's rough, bro.
I mean,
that is rough.
That's
man.
that's why you got to trade him.
Starting 4. Bro.
That's why you got to trade him.
Yeah.
And by the way, the guy that you'd like to be your starting 4 is Bojan Bogdanovic, but he plays like a 2.